Hey, Mike.
Hey Gary, how are you?
Good. How you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Sometimes after my classes. That's how long. Uh, there's your smiling face.
Yeah, I had a
Hey, you got some specs too. I'm going to take mine off now. Depends on whether I have to read my notes or not.
turn.
How's life been treating you?
Great.
Yeah.
I am a lucky man.
Well, aren't we all? Hey, I appreciate your taking a little bit of time out here this morning, and I
No
think you
problem.
kind of get the gist of what I may be trying to do here.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
suppose a little different than you're giving back, but giving back nonetheless to try. We were all that person who got into this amazing business, um, and for so many of us, we kind of just figured it out as we went. But
Yep.
I have often thought, if I had more of a mentor, what would that person have said? How would they have changed my directory, or would it all have ended up right where we are right now? It's not such a bad directory after all.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is awesome. I've
Yeah,
I've never not met with any student who's wanted to meet or anybody in town that's wanted to connect. I think that's probably the most important thing you can do to help the next generation, at least.
yeah, that's great. So you are an ad Hall of Fame guy. You've got accolades. You've won lots of awards. Quite honestly, Gary, you're certainly one of the primary movers and shakers in the creative field from Milwaukee. I think I met you way back when in the earliest of BVK days, or were you at McDonald Davis prior?
Yeah, back in
Oh,
the old days. Yeah, I was at
yeah,
Bergdorf Voss. Yeah, when me and
yeah.
Bert,
There
Donald
you
Davis.
go.
Yep.
That's right. So the merger. Um,
Mhm.
tell So, as you're talking to me, sort of keep in mind of a student to a climber to,
Mhm.
frankly, there also is an audience, I'm sure, of those who are uh, longer in the tooth who now are thinking about, gee, maybe I should start my own shop and all that stuff. So, I kind of leave it the breadth of that wide open. And so we can kind of go wherever you want. But if you would, can you take us back to even before college and whatnot? Who were you? What kind of guy were you doing? I kind of normally like to see that other people might see themselves in how you might have started.
Mhm. Sure. I grew up in the city of Milwaukee. My dad was a plumber. Everybody in our family, all my aunts and uncles were all plumbers, carpenters,
All
all
tradespeople.
mechanics, all tradespeople.
Fantastic.
Um, in fact, the funny thing is, people ask, who was your biggest influence or how, who helped you get to become the person you are? And the absolute biggest influence in my life, and I think what made me as good a creative director and creative as I was my dad,
Yeah.
who was a plumber.
Why?
He taught me every he was a plumber, but there was no problem he couldn't fix. There was no mechanical problem, no engine problem, something that would break around your house. And and he could fix all the things that, if you took your car to a mechanic, so well, that's unfixable. My dad he was like a MacGyver of things, and he would find things in the garage, things that had nothing to do with the car or
Just
the
give me a
plumbing
paper
or
clip.
whatever. And he had chewing gum and duct tape and a paper clip, and he could fix anything. And I I didn't like the trade side of it, but he always made me help and watch.
Sure.
And after a while, the things he could do with nothing, it rubs off on you. There was nothing he couldn't do. And then there was no, he'd be in groups like the Lions Club things, and they present him with problems or county boards that lawyers couldn't figure out and really smart. But my dad could always figure out a different solution because he taught me how to look at things from a different angle. Look at things from Everybody would look at things the same way, and my dad would always look at it from the opposite place. And he could solve anything. He would never accept failure, that you couldn't fix something or do something. and that's absolutely how I've kind of my whole career has been that way.
What a wonderful blessing. I mean, when you're saying that, not a guess of if there's, one, and oftentimes in these interviews, I hope that there are three or four little nuggets of gold, right? That'll resonate with somebody. And to me, that's one of them. If you really want to be great in this business, especially from the creative side, but I think it's beyond that. It's the sales side and everything
Mhm.
else. To just be able to put on a different hat or to get from a different vantage point, oftentimes stealing that vantage point, right, from somebody else who, I see in our industry, it's like I've stolen things from the auto industry that I brought into some manufacturing zone that, in terms of their industry, they've never even thought about it. And it was like, well, if it worked over here, why didn't it work over there? And so I think we get myopic sometimes, and that's kind of a curious place. So that your dad doing that and being the guy that, well, I got to fix this thing. The sink is leaking.
Right.
Here's an answer.
You don't have to grow up in a family of writers or art directors or creative people to be creative or
Right.
to because creative all it is problem solving.
Yeah.
Advertising is problem solving. Whether you're a strategic planner, or a media person, or account person, it's solving something in a new and creative way that's going to get people's attention. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
complex.
you say that's all that it is, but there's a bunch of people out there going right now. It's like how to draw. I remember as a kid, there'd be the how to draw a cat. Step one, draw a circle. Step two, draw another circle. Step three, Picasso. And you're like, what happened between two and three? I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think that's because people people don't understand people. People don't understand. They're not students of people. The other thing that I think helped me become successful in my career, and I don't see necessarily in a lot of people, is that my dad and mom and dad helped me grow up around every kind of person, every kind of person from every walk of life, every creed, every color, and and you became friends with them. So I spent half of my time in a little town of Crandon, Wisconsin. Population at the time was 1,900 people, and that was considered a big town in the area.
Yeah.
So I grew up
Yeah.
around a
Franklin, I'll
whole
bet.
different set of people. Yeah, and I grew up, and then half my time I grew up in the city. And then the other little blessing was my dad owned a plumbing shop, and every summer in the summers I would work for him as a kid. And in the summers, he would drive down to like St. Ben's or the homeless shelter. He would pick up guys off the street to give them day laborer jobs. And I'd have to be in the car with them. And I'd have to get to know them. We'd talk about them. As one of the youngest guys, he made me eat lunch with these guys every day. You know, these were 50, 60-year-old black homeless guys, or some weren't all homeless. They had big families,
Yep.
but they had nothing. And I got to know them. And my dad, he would even take me to go have dinner at their houses sometime. And so I got to learn every side of people. He would you get to know what it was like if your grandma had Alzheimer's and you had visited her in the hospital, or people with cancer that were dying. You met and understood people from all walks of life. And when you really spend time doing that, you can talk to anybody. You
Right.
can figure out what makes anybody tick in an ad or a communication, and you can write so genuinely to any population of any audience. And I think that's something that's really important.
I assume you draw on that empathy
Mhm.
in the campaigns that you've done. People often wonder how do you wear that other hat? The creative brief comes down. I mean, you've written a ton of them, but when it was handed to you, and you said now you are aiming at a 35-year-old homemaker with two kids,
Mhm.
how did you possibly put on that hat?
Well, that's the thing, because I had experienced, even as a young guy, people always used to say you were an old soul when I was young,
Mm,
because I experienced so much stuff as a kid and a young person. I understood what it was like I was a teen parent. I had a baby in college. I had a, I myself was on food stamps and aid to families with dependent children. I understood what it was like to have nothing. I understood what it was like to be rich, be poor, and and I always tell people, and you kind of said it, but I great ideas come from your experiences in life, what you've seen, I always I tell people to steal from life.
Mhm.
That's where all the ideas, everything
There,
you
somewhere
need to make
it's
it great.
there.
Yeah. And I mean, if I wrote a ad for the cancer uh, treatment center, or I wrote an ad for a tourism destination, I wrote it from some experience that I had or something that I had seen, and I just translated that into the most, genuine, emotional, you know, spot or campaign, but it always came from something that was real that had experienced.
Well, that helps explain. You've done some of the most poignant spots, and also some of the. I think people are surprised sometimes at how controversial or hard hitting some of the spots that you've done over the years have been.
Yeah,
It's like, well, gee, it's just those guys from Milwaukee, and then all of a sudden you're like the abuse campaign. It's like, holy shit.
yeah.
Yeah, I've had to do, and maybe one of your greatest successes. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the shaken baby stuff that you did, as I understand it, really did have an effect,
Oh yeah,
profound effect.
a lot of our campaigns
And
have.
I remember in Milwaukee that no one could explain it. The spate of shaken baby syndrome deaths. That I mean, over a course of a very short span of time.
And then they all stopped
Yeah,
immediately. Yep.
yeah, amazing. And people
But
think, well, what can advertising do?
yeah.
Well,
Yep. Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
we worked for 8 years with the United Way to help reduce teen pregnancy 65%. People said it could never be done.
yeah.
There's so many things, again, that people will tell you they can't be done, or you can't do them a certain way. That's, again, another thing my dad taught me. He said, you don't ever quit on a problem. Every problem can be figured out. And sometimes other forces are trying to make you quit, or they're trying to stop you. You can't do this ad. It's too controversial. You can't, everybody tells you what you can't do, but those are
The
if
famous
you,
client saying, "I have concerns."
yeah, but those are you have to take calculated risks if you want to achieve great results. And that's the one thing, again, my dad taught me. You never give up. You always find a way. And a lot of times you had to find a creative way. Almost every great campaign, if you took the 20 most successful campaigns, whether they're PSAs or they're tourism campaigns or whatever, almost every single campaign I did that was great was killed. Maybe not once,
Mm.
twice, four times. Some, and I never gave up trying to figure out a way to convince the people that I had to convince to do them that this was the best way. And every time, and you had to figure out really creative ways to do some of those. And
Yeah, give me a nugget. I mean, because that's an incredibly powerful statement, and it sounds like, oh, gee whiz, I just haven't tried hard enough because we've all presented what we thought were killer ideas that got shut down. And
Mhm.
there have been times where, I went to bat for it and fought like hell. And ultimately, I'm the asshole because I'm, just continuing to pound. And it's like, it's time to go away. We got to go with this. And so you're getting a paycheck and you say, fine, I fought hard. And now I got to put lipstick on this pig. I don't agree, but I'll do the damnedest that I can do to make this great. But if you actually got the creative way to get the nugget of what that idea was, tell me a for instance of how taking an extra swing or two at the plate got you a home run.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples. And sometimes they're all so different. Like a lot of the PSAs that we would do outdoor campaigns, and the billboard company would say, yeah, we'd love to help you, blah, blah, blah. And then they'd see the creative and they go, oh, no, we can't run that. Okay. And they call the client, they say, no, we can't run this campaign. So the client would say, okay, we got to come up with a different campaign. And of course I'd be like, well, that's you don't give up. This is an incredible campaign. It's going to impact people. So let's meet with the let's meet with the head of the outdoor company, So we'd set up a meeting, whatever they come in and go, just, we're not going to air this. If we get even one, we don't like to get letters from people complaining about our stuff. Okay. So the client's like, okay, well, they're ready to give up. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll have a team of PR people that will respond to any correspondence. I've already drafted what our result, why it's important you're doing this and why whatever. And then we'll think about it and they come back and say, no, no, we don't want to do it. So I'd come back a second time and they'd be a little annoyed. And then I'd come back and meet the press. I say, well, what if we don't put these 50 billboards out there? What if we only buy one billboard? And here's the deal. We'll pay for it for a month. If you get even one letter, then you can take it down, keep the money we paid, and just give us one. But if it's up there for a month and you don't get any letters, will you then give us 10 more boards for 1 month? And if you don't get any letters after those 10 boards, will you give me 20 more boards? And they'd have to sit, they said it's all about just figuring out ways to make them go, I can't say no to you because it makes a lot of sense. So then they'd do it and they'd put them up. The shaken baby spot. It's it's considered probably one of so that's the spot where we played a crying baby for 60 seconds to raise awareness about what you feel right before you shake a baby, and that you should never ever do that. So I sent it to I wanted to get all the radio stations to air it. So I sent it out, thought it was the greatest idea, recorded it, sent it out, and I think 3 radio stations said they would air it. The rest said, no way, people are going to change the stations.
Yep.
I was so devastated. It was such a simple, great idea to help this organization that had this record number of shake. It was just off the kids were being killed every week. And I gave up on it. It's one of my biggest successes and one of my biggest failures. Because while I gave up on it, kids kept getting killed.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2 months later, and probably 10 more kids had been severely injured, that I was so frustrated. I went into another writer's office and I said, I'm so pissed off. What are you pissed off about? I got this spot that could help with all the shakings in Milwaukee, but the stations won't air it. They said those people will change the station. And this young writer, her name was Pam Muffson, she looks at me she just looks at me like I'm an idiot. She goes, well, why don't you get all the stations to air it at the same time? It wasn't my idea. People think it was my idea. It was this Pam Muffson. She
Nice.
said that, and I'm like, I could kiss you.
Right.
I quickly ran out. You solved the problem. I quickly ran out. I sent an email off to it was like 12 station managers to get 21 stations, and said I want to air it. Blah 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 blah. And I thought I solved the problem. Well, I get 6 people say, yeah, we'll do it. That's a great idea. The rest I'll say, no way.
You got to get the buy-in of
We
everybody.
can't do it because of this reason. Our programming is at a certain time, blah, blah, blah. This is at a certain time. There's no way we can do it. And I'm devastated again. But now I'm not going to give up.
You're
So
close.
I wait a day and I send another email out to all the stations saying, it is so awesome. We have 85% of all the stations signed up. We've got 16 stations. And I knew there was groups of like 3, so I couldn't have the number be too high. And I basically told a little fib that
You
everybody's in.
fudged the math a little bit,
I
man.
said, "Hey, we're doing it on this," and I picked the date, the time. It's next week. We're all in, and I know a couple of you can't do it, but if you change your mind up until the last second, tell me. I'll send you the spot, and you can jump in because this is going to be an historic radio event in the city of Milwaukee. It's going to be. Everybody's going to talk about it. Within a half hour, every station manager in the city called me back and said they were in.
Beautiful.
So again, there's different levels. You just keep trying different things. You got to be creative.
That's
Sometimes you got to fudge the math a little, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think early on in our career, it was like industry professions with the highest integrity rating. There used to be a time when it was pastor, but uh, here's doctors and lawyers and whatever. And I think ad guys came in maybe one tick above used car salesmen. So
Yep. Yep.
there we are. Hey, before I get you to talk a little bit more about Serve itself,
Mhm.
go back to getting how did you get the job in the first place? What were you doing? You were at Madison, is that right?
Yeah. So I graduated from UW-Madison. I had
You were a
degree,
journalism guy. Is that
yeah,
true?
journalism and psychology. Yeah, double
Okay,
major.
so you were writing.
Yep. I got a full time as a junior. I told you I had a baby and got married my junior
Yeah,
year, and so I had no money to pay for
he's
anything.
got to
So
start working.
I've I had already been building a portfolio with a guy I had met from a fraternity, and I had done some work for him, some brochures and things for his fraternity. I was always doing side jobs for anybody to build my
And,
portfolio.
let me stop you just for a real
Yep.
quick second. Already, that presumes that you had an idea that advertising design, something like that, was going to be a route
Yeah.
for you to go. How did
Yep.
that even come about?
Well, I started in journalism. I wanted to be a newspaper reporter my whole life.
Okay.
Since since the second grade, I was going to write for newspapers, and I went to my first year actually to Missouri to Mizzou, which is one of the best journalism schools in the country. And I got talking to people, and I found out that the newspaper writing business is a really, you don't get any creative writing. It's a terrible job, terrible pay, terrible. It's just not a,
Didn't sound so attractive
you might
anyway.
have your own creative column when you're 50. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work for me. So I switched to advertising
Okay.
we actually PR, and I worked for some magazines when I transferred to Madison. Um, and then I met a guy who started his own agency. He was a year ahead of me. And he goes, I want you to be my creative guy. You, uh, I want you to be the art director, the writer. And I knew nothing about art direction. I had a pretty good eye for stuff, but I was a writer. And so he taught me how to use the computer and typeset and do all this stuff. And I worked full time from my junior year till I graduated, 40, 50 hours a week at this little two-person agency. We had an office at the Capitol.
Yep.
And when I graduated, I had a gigantic portfolio.
Huh.
I designed logos. I did the Badger bus logo. I did all kinds of stuff. Um, but I learned again how to figure stuff out, and I did it all myself.
So when you got hired, you started at Beta Rudder, is that right?
No, actually, I started in Chicago. My first three jobs were all business to business places.
Okay.
Star Mark in Chicago for 2 years. Then I went to the Brady Company for maybe 8 months in Milwaukee, and then Beta Rudder for about 6 or 7 months. All of them heavy agriculture and
Right.
industrial business to business stuff. So I worked on everything from, you know, corrugated box companies to manure spreaders.
Hordes Dairyman.
Yeah, yep.
If you're in
I
Milwaukee,
remember that.
somewhere
Yep,
along the line, you've done a Hordes Dairyman
yep,
campaign.
absolutely.
I'll get into
Yeah.
that later. But then Birds of Voss.
So yeah, so Birds of Voss. The job came up. The guy who was they had just lost
Were
they
you
were a
looking?
young boutique place, really small, like
Were you
20.
looking or were you found?
I was always looking. I wasn't really looking at the time, but this job popped up. I had just been I follow the kind of award-winning agencies that you saw at I went to the Addies and stuff, and I'm like, oh, the stuff they show looks really fun. It's consumer stuff looks really awesome, and this little shop had they every 2 years would have a young team that would win a bunch of awards, and then they go to Laughlin or they move up the ladder, get out of this little place, and this job came open, and I'm like, wow, that might be a good opportunity for me. And so I went in, met with the owner, Mike Voss and Don Birdsall. We had lunch, and I had a big, beautiful portfolio, but I didn't have any consumer ads in it.
Mm.
I had all business to business ad, Dow ads, case ads, all this stuff. And at the end of and we hit it off. Great. The guy who owned the place was an up north guy. I was an up north guy. We both like to fish, and so at the end, we're walking out and he goes, I'd love to hire you. I hire you right now, but you have no consumer work in your book. And we're walking out the door of this restaurant and I go, well, I actually have a huge portfolio of consumer work, but it's all like pencils. It's little concepts I work on the side.
Sure.
Why didn't you bring them? So I thought you'd want to see my polished stuff. He goes, I know a great ad when I see him. And it, will you come back in 2 days? Bring me those pencils. We'll meet on Thursday. So I come back. Of course, I had no pencils. I had nothing.
I,
Again,
I kind of knew that's where the story was going, but
I'm thinking what my dad would do. He would
yeah,
come up with a way to
tell
do
me.
it right on the spot.
Yeah.
And then I went home. I worked for 2 nights. I came up with 33 little ads, 11 campaigns of three, all different for everybody I knew who had a bike shop. My dad had a plumbing shop. I knew guys that had that ran, you know,
Did you take some napkins and crunch them up so they looked like they'd been around
no, I
for a while?
purposely made everything really small and I cut up I still have all these. I still have all.
That's beautiful.
And I brought all this. I did stuff for the Admirals hockey. I did anything I thought they thought would be really cool.
Yep.
I walked in and I laid them on the table, three at a time. Here's this campaign for this, here's the campaign. He stops me after the sixth campaign. And I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, you did all these. I said, yeah. And he goes, if we hire you, could we do these for these people? And I said, yeah, every one of these campaigns. You absolutely. He hired me on the spot. Again, I made up a story that I had work. He loved it so much. I hired it. And I will say, like my first like 3 or 4 award-winning campaigns I got into CA or got all came from that little
Did
stack
you
of
ever
ads.
tell them?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I told him right after once he got me in. But the funny thing, he thought that was even
Right,
greater because
right.
it made you a really resourceful guy,
What
think
are
on his
you willing
feet.
to do for us?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, Nate,
So again,
that's awesome. So you
and then
had
I've been here for 35 years. You know,
well, yeah, I was like, holy cow, I couldn't even believe it. I took a quick LinkedIn look, 35 years at BVK.
yeah,
I mean,
it's a long
it's a
time.
freaking lifetime.
It is.
Yeah.
It's been
Just
great.
awesome. Well, tell me, because I want to be fairly true to time, but I'm never on time.
Mhm.
Um, so you did all this great work at BVK, tourism and just great stuff. But what, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, sir? When did Serve
20,
start?
22 or 23 years
20.
ago. 24 years ago.
Wow.
23,
So tell
something like
me the foundation of that. And for people who don't know, and real quickly, I mean, you've been doing cause marketing, for a lifetime as well. And just
that.
as we had touched on some of those campaigns, exceedingly effectively, it's got to be very gratifying.
Mhm.
But tell me the impetus of that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people attribute to serves, so that's the nonprofit that I run. That's my idea, but it was actually an epiphany I had at church. I went to a church we'd never been to, listening to a sermon, and I was kind of in a bad mood. I didn't want to be there, and I was kind of judging the speaker, who was a young pastor, and I I wasn't really paying attention. And all of a sudden, in his sermon, it was all about that everybody is given a purpose in life, a mission in life, and everybody's given tools and talents and resources that you were meant to share in the service of others. And he got about 2 minutes into that, and all of a sudden, I stopped listening or stop hearing his voice, and everything kind of flooded through. Here's what you were here to do. At the time, I wanted to quit BVK because I was frustrated. I was really frustrated. I was trying to get a partnership in the agency and it was taking a long time. And I wanted to work on bigger accounts and bigger things and all the little underdog brands. It was all difficult to work on. And I thought, I'm better. I should deserve better. And then this kind of epiphany flooded that you were put at BVK because you have the resources to do whatever you want. I could do anything I wanted to work on. You were meant to start a nonprofit called Serve, and you're going to do something that nobody else does. It's going to be only you're going to do campaigns and work for underserved organizations that no one will work for. They're the people that have no money, the people that don't understand advertising. Uh,
Were there bright lights and angels in this
no, no,
in the pew?
it was literally, it lasted for probably 15 minutes. But the details of it were so
Sounds like
detailed.
it was
And
exceedingly clear.
you're going to trade to do this. You're going to trade your future partnership in the agency that you've been negotiating. You're going to not take a raise for 10 years. In return, in return for they're going to fund, I think it was $100,000 in an executive director position and an account person, and you're going to have all that. You're going to have access to all the resources, kind of at your discretion to create these campaigns. And you're going to create these campaigns for nothing. You're never going to take money for doing it. You're going to give it all away for free. Um, and then there was other stuff. You're going to open up an office downtown. You're going to do this. And your first executive director is going to be Lisa Lilligren, who runs the ad club. And you're going to, it was so detailed. Everything that happened in that thing happened exactly how it went through my mind and or how it was put into my mind. And I went to my boss the next day. I wrote this big long thing saying this is what I want to do. First of all, I came out of church. I was giddy. It was like I knew what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and it had nothing to do with trying to make more money or trying to work on bigger ads. It was like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I told my wife. My wife didn't say a word. She's like, "That's great." She didn't ask, "You're not going to take a raise for 10 years, and we're going to lose this giant partnership deal." Didn't say a word. I go into work the next day. I tell my boss what happened and what I want to do, and he looks at me and he goes, "Okay." He didn't he didn't ask just to say how kind of divine this all was. He
Yeah.
didn't ask a question. He goes, "Well, do you want to shake hands on it or you want me to sign this document?" I go, "We can just shake hands, sure." Because he's always a pretty trustworthy guy, took care of me. And we shook hands and that was it. And then I had to figure out how to start a nonprofit and how to do all this stuff. Um, and and how to raise money because we didn't have money to have an office or supplies or different
Yep.
things. So I had to raise like 60, 70 grand a year on our own. But that was it. And then the rest was history. And then we started doing work for people and more people saw it and they told other people you got to call these guys. They're pretty good and they're going to do really great work for you that's going to help your organization. And then it just grew and grew and grew.
How do you have, how do you get creatives to work for and with you? How does
Well,
that
it's
process work? Let's say
um,
we got somebody watching this and going, God, I would love to be a part of that. How do they be a part of that?
I've had people from different agencies all the time ask to volunteer. Um, they it doesn't usually work out. I always will talk to anybody and find a place for somebody to do something, and we'd be happy to do it. Um, uh, it's been mostly BVK people because
Well, they're right there. They're
you're
accessible.
right there, and you know what they're working on and what they can do. It's harder for people at other agencies to work on stuff only because you can't control their time. So a lot of time they'll start working on it, but then they'll get busy and they'll say, "I can't do it." When you volunteer on a serve project, there's no excuses. If you're working 60 hours a week on your day job,
Yeah.
then I expect you to figure out a way to do it on the weekend or whatever, because we have deadlines and things too. But um, you can contact me and I'll put you in touch with our executive director, Lauren.
If they're gonna work with Serve, they
You
damn
can
well
move.
better serve.
Yeah, and we'll serve. And it's funny because people used to do it, and I even used to do nonprofit work to really do creative work that benefited myself.
That's the
And,
irony,
and
isn't it?
once you see it actually working, it completely changes your whole tune about all of it. Um,
It's the irony of the old, well, I cut my teeth in a number of different places, but up in the Twin Cities, and when the Twin Cities completely changed sort of the ad picture, and Fallon McElligott was the first guys, and so they rode, the church to their first creative wins, and
yeah,
it's like, well, shit, if you can make Jesus a CA winner, then I'm in. Let's
yeah,
go.
exactly.
You know.
Yep.
Oh yeah, what an amazing thing! But you've really just done some amazing stuff. Hey, we're at 35 minutes here. I'm going to ask you one last question, which is, um, we talked a number of different ways, but to that, maybe more to the climber person. They've got some experience. They're trying to build their own book. If they're like me, moving up is moving out. If they're like you, moving up is still a challenge to figure out how to move through that system.
Mhm.
Although you moved out and up and all around as well. What's the nugget of wisdom? What do they need to do? If they want to become maybe not you on Serve, but they would love to see a career not unlike what you have had. How does that happen?
Well, there's a bunch of different ways. First, I would say um, you want to make friends as many places in the industry as possible, and I always tell people be a prolific sharer of of yourselves, of your time, your talents, your ideas. Volunteer to be part of the ad club. People don't understand. I was one of the founders of the ad club that I've been the president three different times when they needed me. I've always said yes to people who needed help. So I'm always you're and I never did it to get anything in return. It's just somebody needed me to help, the nonprofit work, the whatever. Somebody needs you to interview their kid. But the more connections you made, the more people you help in life, whether you do nonprofit work or you work with an ad club or you're a mentor, it's unbelievable how much comes back to you. Again, you don't do it for that reason, but um,
Give to
you
get.
know, I still get calls once a month or twice a month, old employees that want to reconnect, and the first thing they tell you is, you helped me more than anybody else in my life in advertising. Whether you helped them through a hard time, gave them an opportunity no one else, whatever. And that's the most rewarding thing you could ever have happen. So, just share your time, reach out to people. The ad club's a great place to start. The ad club can always use help, always use volunteers. Um, and also just never I never waited for opportunities. Never wait for people to give you anything. Never wait for people to give you a better opportunity, a raise, a better project to work on. Um, you got to make stuff happen. So part of the reason I was successful is I was always building my book on the side. I never waited for my job, which these business to business places didn't have anything to offer. And I was always working on the side for friends, family, doing projects for people that made me more creative. But I don't think you can never make enough friends and network enough. Um, and what you're doing is a great way to do that
Great.
through your new
I appreciate
organization.
your time. May be coming back to you again, maybe with something more specific, or maybe even to talk about a campaign, or hell, maybe we just do a quickie campaign right on the spot, so they
There
can
you go.
kind of see, well, how does this even work? Um,
Yep.
but that's great. Have yourself a great day, and
All right.
I will open this up to you and to all the BVK people. I'd love to have them in there. I'm trying to make better employees
Right.
who will do as you have instructed. And it's like, well, so that's what Gary wants, then damn it, then that's what I'll do. So I welcome the addition. It's free, at least for now, until we figure out what the hell I'm doing with this thing. So again, thanks for your time.
All right, Mike. No problem. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.